Initially, it was a missing persons case.
Well, I'm going to tell you right straight up, a king don't leave his kingdom.
He pulled out a big butcher knife and put it up to her throat and threatening to kill her.
He was a total maniac.
He beat and stabbed his own grandson.
Police found Martin's body. Someone had planted tomato plants on top of the shallow grave.
5 people charged with the murder of one person. Who did what? How were they connected?
This killing was unmitigated, unjustified, unexcusable.
I think he got what he deserved.
If you kill the devil, you're going to answer for it.
Today we're in Lunaweacy, Georgia, a peaceful town of less than 2,000. But in 1997, it was the scene of a murder involving 5 people and a man many say got exactly what he deserved.
Lunaweacy is the quintessential small southern town. It's a bedroom community outside of Hinesville. Not a lot of violent crime there. Basically a peaceful community.
Until what would come to be known as the Tomato Patch Murder, the town's main claim to fame was its reputation as the nation's #1 speed trap. It was a problem tackled by several governors, including one who ordered massive billboards erected to warn passing motorists.
Georgia ended up making a whole bunch of new traffic laws because of Lunaweacy. So it's kind of well known among the Georgia legal community.
But this sleepy Georgia town was about to become known to the law for another more sinister reason when in May of 1997, a 64-year-old retired trucker named Thurman Martin was reported missing.
Thurman Martin was a patriarch of a family. His daughter and her husband lived in a mobile home behind the home where Thurman Martin lived. The daughter's 2 children from a previous marriage also lived there as well. That would be Billy Crowder and Katie Crowder.
I received a telephone call from Billy Crowder, who is the grandson of Thurman Martin. And he informed me at that time he had got up to go to school early in the morning. He came back home, and his grandfather had not returned back home. He was very concerned, where his grandfather might be at this time.
Initially, it was a missing persons case. The sheriff's office in Long County had contacted us, likely contacted other stations, that they had an older gentleman that was missing.
But almost immediately, police became suspicious.
It's very unusual to report someone 3 or 4 hours before dark, so we suspected something just was not adding up.
The police only grew more suspicious after questioning family members. Katie Crowder, Thurman's granddaughter, told them 3 pairs of Thurman's pants were missing and suggested he might have left town.
So they wanted to lead us to maybe he had gone off with another truck driver out on the road. So we kept questioning people around town.
As police tried to determine who might have wanted Martin dead, the conversations kept coming back to the patriarch's treatment of his own family.
He was abusive from my point of view because, like I said, I've seen him over here at the shop with Billy. He's beat him in the face.
The people that you heard from, they all seem to say something negative about him. People claimed that they had firsthand knowledge of some of the abuse that had gone on against his daughter and his grandchildren.
But with nothing concrete connecting Martin's disappearance to his family, the Long County Sheriff's Department called in the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Agent Ron Brooks was assigned to the case.
He was reported missing on May 18th, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation did not get involved until approximately 10 days later.
I got a call from the GBI agent, and he asked me, he said, you know anything about Thurman Martin being missing? I said, well, I'm going to tell you right straight up, a king don't leave his kingdom. You can look wherever you want to look, but I'm just telling you, I know this man. He didn't leave his throne because he was the king.
The authorities initially zeroed in on 2 members of the Crowder family.
When it happened, we really suspected the daughter, Diane Crowder, and the son-in-law, John Stanton.
Diana and her husband John lived in a trailer just a stone's throw away from Martin's home. Stanton denied any connection to Martin's disappearance, but investigators found it harder and harder to ignore one thing.
The buzz around town of years of abuse that Thurman Martin may have inflicted on all of these family members.
One neighbor told police Diana had told her Martin could drop dead and that she would be the first one to put a cross on his grave. And Martin's son told investigators his daddy had whipped John Stanton 4 or 5 times and that John probably did it. But with no direct evidence of foul play, the investigation stalled until Ron Brooks got a call from Tony Shackelford.
Tony Shackelford was the girlfriend of Jason Jordan.
And Jason Jordan was a close friend of Thurman Martin's grandson, Billy.
Tony Shackelford indicated that her boyfriend may have been involved in the disappearance of Thurman Martin.
Jason Jordan and Billy Crowder had been friends for many, many years. Jason Jordan had been out of state and was talking with friends, telling them that he had witnessed a murder, that he had been a part of a murder.
We asked Jason Jordan to come in for an interview.
At first, Jordan said, "I did tell a friend that Thurman Martin was missing and that someone he knew may have killed his abusive grandfather." But Jordan said he'd lied because he just wanted to act big.
We asked Jason Jordan to take a polygraph, which he agreed.
Investigators asked Jordan questions like, "Did you cause any harm to Thurman Martin?" And "Do you know where Thurman Martin is located?"
The results of the polygraph showed deception.
When confronted with the polygraph results, Jordan started talking.
Jason Jordan stated that he was present when Thurman Martin was killed, and he subsequently gave us a 2-page confession.
Jason Jordan's confession led police back here to Ludowici, where they made a grisly discovery: the decomposing remains of Thurman Martin buried beneath a tomato patch.
It was a revenge story the national media couldn't resist.
Steps from the home he lived in, police found Martin's body wrapped up and buried in a 4-foot pit. Someone had planted tomato plants on top of the shallow grave to camouflage the area.
You're talking about the first week of July in South Georgia. As soon as I opened the door of the news car, the smell was all over the yard. The heat, the smell, the bugs stayed in my mind for years.
Based on Jason Jordan's confession and the discovery of Thurman Martin's body, police arrested not just Diana Crowder and John Stanton, but also Martin's grandchildren, Billy and Katie Crowder.
The family members accused of Thurman Martin's death returned to court Monday. His daughter, Diane Crowder, son-in-law, John Stanton, granddaughter, Katie Crowder, grandson, Billy, and their friend, Jason Jordan. You're asking, how are 5 people charged with the murder of one person? Who did what? How were they connected? Who was involved to what level?
When we return, in a family where everyone seemed to want Thurman Martin dead, investigators try to separate the mastermind from the accomplice.
This was a multi-generational family plan to eliminate the patriarch.
After the body of Thurman Martin was found buried just yards away from his front door and covered in tomato plants, police had arrested and charged 5 people with his murder: 4 family members and a friend of Billy Crowder, Jason Jordan. 2 murder charges, however, were quickly dropped.
Thurman Martin's daughter, Diane, and granddaughter, Katie, were charged with being a part of this crime after the fact. Their involvement came cleaning up the house, helping dispose of the body, and then reporting him missing as well.
They both pleaded guilty to hindering apprehension of a criminal, and Katie was sentenced to 6 months in prison and 5 years of probation. Diana was found guilty but mentally ill and ordered to undergo a year of psychiatric treatment. The prosecution next turned their attention to Jason Jordan.
Jason Jordan would be an accomplice in this case. He was recruited by Billy Crowder and John Stanton to be a part of the shooting and the murder that night.
Jordan insisted that he hadn't been part of the killing, that he'd just helped with the cover-up. But unlike the Crowder family, he barely even knew the murdered man.
The prosecutors, they said he doesn't even have the defense of being a victim of this abuse. He's not a family member, but he's been a party to the crime.
Do you have anything to say?
Jason Jordan's trial for the murder of Thurman Martin was held here at the Long County Courthouse in Ludowici.
While Jordan was facing life in prison, many involved saw his trial as just the opening act before the main event.
The trial of Jason Jordan, that was almost kind of a prelude.
Del Kennedy reported on the Jordan trial for WTOC News in Savannah at the time.
From the start, prosecutors portrayed Jason Jordan as an active part in the 1997 shooting murder of Thurman Martin. I think both sides were waiting to see what the jury would do with Jason Jordan. He was sort of the barometer, so to speak, of how they would handle this case. They said he knew his friend Billy Crowder was planning to kill his grandfather. If a jury was sympathetic to Jason Jordan, would they be sympathetic to Billy Crowder and John Stanton and possibly acquit them? Defense lawyer Lloyd Murray contended that Jordan was merely a bystander. Jason Jordan's defense relied on peer pressure, that he was coerced by his friend and his friend's family to be a part of this. Jordan's defense team offered no witnesses during the trial.
Jason Jordan never testified in his own defense, but his confession was admitted into evidence. He told GBI agent Ron Brooks and Deputy Sonny Chambliss that one night at about midnight, he was at his house sleeping when Billy Crowder came over and they went riding around. They ended up at John Stanton's trailer where he saw a .22 caliber rifle and heard Billy and John talking about killing Thurman Martin. The three then walked over to Thurman Martin's house, with Billy entering first. Jason said that he stopped and waited in the kitchen. He heard multiple shots ring out, a pause, and then two more shots. John Stanton then appeared, tried to hand the gun to Jason and get him to shoot Thurman as well, but Jason refused.
He felt the pressure to be there and be part of it, but that in the end, he did not fire a shot.
The prosecution wasn't buying it.
Very cold-blooded. The evidence showed the man was asleep in his bed.
Prosecutors called to the stand two of Jordan's friends who claimed the defendant had bragged to them about taking part in a murder.
Even though he didn't pull the trigger, the fact that he did not withdraw, but instead went along for morbid curiosity was a sin that the jury had no sympathy for.
Jurors didn't take very long to convict Jason Jordan. They came back with that verdict pretty quickly, and he was convicted of murder. Jurors decided his actions were enough to earn him life in prison. Took just 20 minutes to find Jordan guilty. Their speed angered the defendant's family.
It was like he was convicted before he even got inside. And to me, it's not fair. They should have, the jury should have took longer than that to give a decision like that. You just can't put somebody's life away like that, just like that. And it wasn't right to me.
In Long County, I'm Dale Kennedy, WTOC News.
When we return, Billy Crowder and John Stanton go on trial for the murder of Thurman Martin.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Reed claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious.
After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The Killer or Cover-Up Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
5 people had been arrested for their part in the murder of Thurman Martin. 2 pleaded guilty to being an accessory after the fact, and a jury found Jason Jordan guilty of murder.
But now the prosecution had to contend with 2 defendants who evoked far more sympathy than Jordan, the elderly and frail John Stanton and the well-liked 19-year-old Billy Crowder. Neither had a criminal record, and both appeared to have suffered for years under Thurman Martin.
It's unlike any other case I've been involved in. It's a very, very sad, heart-wrenching story.
John Cloy was asked to represent Stanton after his court-appointed lawyer bowed out just weeks before the trial.
I was expecting a younger man, but, you know, once I learned that he was terminally ill, I think, and going through chemotherapy, I think they had a lot to do with why he looked so much older than he actually was.
During pretrial deliberations, it became apparent just how ill Stanton was.
He completely passed out next to me, and the judge thought he was faking, and the EMTs came and realized he was actually out, and so they rushed him to the hospital.
The prosecutors understood well the challenges they were facing, but sick or not, they intended to uphold the law.
This was a tough case from the standpoint that there was a human element there. You've got John Stanton, who sick with bone cancer. Then you've got now a young man, Billy Crowder. Then you've got Thurman Martin and all the allegations about what he had done. You've got a sad situation. But nevertheless, these people went in and unlawfully and without excuse killed someone, and that's what we have to deal with. I, along with Assistant DA Jay Dow, will be handling the case on behalf of the state.
Tom Durden was a damn fine trial lawyer. Authentic, unassuming, extremely intelligent.
All of this evidence, ladies and gentlemen, is going to show that this killing was unmitigated, unjustified, unexcusable. And at the appropriate time, I'm going to ask you to return a verdict which speaks the moral and reasonable truth of this case. That would be a verdict of guilty as charged on each count.
This was an execution where they served as, judge, jury, and executioner determining the fate of Thurman Martin. We were tasked with enforcing the law. You don't resolve your problems by killing people in their sleep.
The prosecution's case relied on the physical evidence, the ballistics, the guns that were used to shoot and kill Thurman Martin.
Indeed, a significant amount of the prosecution's case was devoted to showing that Thurman Martin posed no threat when he was executed, defenseless in his bed.
Here you see little adhesive markers, and they are pointing to some blood stains that are located behind the headboard on the wood paneling.
One of the prosecution's first witnesses was the Deputy Chief Medical Officer from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
Martin, your autopsy, did you arrive at an opinion as far as the cause and manner of death?
Yes, sir.
Tell that jury, please.
This gentleman died as a result of 4 gunshot wounds to the head, and that the manner of death would be homicide.
As a result of your autopsy of Thurman Martin, is what you found consistent with the man having been shot in his sleep as he's laying down?
That's certainly possible, yes, sir.
But the strength of the prosecution's physical evidence paled in comparison to the impact of the confessions that came from the defendants' own mouths.
I got the case file, and the very first thing that hit me was my client gave a 27-page written confession. Okay, that was pretty startling, and it was in extreme detail.
John Stanton's statement was read in court by a GBA agent who was present during his confession.
He wanted each person to shoot Thurman so no one would say anything.
When I see a confession that's freely and voluntarily given, and they have a body.
Billy brought a shower curtain, and we lowered the body to the floor on the shower curtain.
It's case over, you don't stand a chance, really.
I know I've done a terrible thing that I went along with and should been mature enough not to let happen. How do you handle what he has done to his own flesh and blood? Thurman Martin has destroyed all of his family even after he is gone.
You're going to have to come up with some type of he deserved killing defense.
But John Stanton wasn't the only person on trial, and Billy Crowder, too, had given an even more detailed and incriminating statement.
Billy, when he got done with his polygraph, the polygraphist, Rodney Rentz, told us that there was some deception shown on the chart, and so we did a subsequent interview with Billy.
At first, Billy denied having anything to do with his grandfather's disappearance.
I had told him that I had received information that he had shot his grandfather. He first denied it and said, I didn't shoot my grandfather with no rifle. And I said to him, rifle? Who said anything about a rifle? How would you have known he was shot with a rifle unless you'd done it? Then he kind of sat back in his chair and kind of got tears in his eyes a little bit, and he said, I swore since I was 6 years old that I'd kill that man.
Billy proceeded to confess in detail to what had happened that fateful night. He told investigators that his grandfather had beaten him ever since he could remember. The final straw came one evening after Martin brutally beat Billy in front of a friend because he'd used the wrong wax on his car. It was then that Billy decided Martin must die. He told his father-in-law, John Stanton, and friend Jason Jordan his plan. All three would take turns shooting Martin so they'd stay forever silent about their shared guilty secret. The night of the murder, the three entered Martin's home with Billy in the lead, holding a rifle equipped with a homemade silencer. Billy crept into Martin's room, placed the barrel of the rifle against his grandfather's head, and pulled the trigger. He continued firing shot after shot until the gun jammed. After clearing the jammed rifle, he passed it to John Stanton, who fired 2 shots into Martin's neck. Stanton then passed the rifle to Jason Jordan, who changed his mind and refused to shoot, saying he's already dead.
But while the confession seemed to be the final nail in the defendant's coffin, they also posed the prosecution with a significant risk.
There's no better proof than the culprit acknowledging guilt. The issue, though, with regard to their confessions was that there was a reason behind their conduct. On the one hand, while it was damning that we had the confession, it was damning with an asterisk because there was a because.
Coming up, while prosecutors appeared confident in public about their case against Crowder and Stanton, in private, they were much less certain that the facts alone would lead to a guilty verdict.
While we had confessions, while we had a body, while we had the forensic evidence, what could be perceived as a straightforward case was not, because of the countervailing concern posed by the alleged battered person syndrome.
You ever been hit with anything like that?
Yeah, I've been hit with that. I've been hit with 18-wheeler tire irons. One time he took and directly stabbed me with a screwdriver. It's across my shoulder blade. Out here's a carburetor screwdriver.
Without that as a defense, it would have been, oh my God, they killed him in his sleep. They shot him in his sleep. It's murder.
The prosecution had laid out a strong factual case that Billy Crowder and John Stanton were guilty of killing Thurman Martin. But those facts did little to hide the glaring weakness in the case, the actions of Thurman Martin himself.
We all know from the time we were little children, growing up, that it is wrong to kill somebody.
Hal Peel, he was an easygoing attorney, very likable, very friendly, connecting with folks.
But you had at least 2 levels of wrong. It was wrong what Thurman Martin did to his own daughter, to his own wife, to his granddaughter, and to his grandson, and to John Stanton, and to everybody else, that he exhibited to them that he was just a mean son of a bitch.
I've heard people jokingly refer sometimes to one defense as an NK defense, needed killing.
I think he got what he deserved. And that is a harsh, harsh judgment.
He painted the picture of Thurman Martin as a horrible, abusive, evil man that was not going to change. And the only recourse that these poor family members, the victims of his alleged actions, the only recourse they had was to kill him.
The base law says if you kill somebody, you got to be punished. There's also a law that has evolved over the years, and Judge Russell will tell you about it, the law of justification. At the same time that this case came up, the Supreme Court had just come out with the Smith case, battered person syndrome, that sometimes people, as a human being, you can't take but so much, which was the basis of our being able to use a battered person defense. And I submit to you that that night last year, Billy Crowder had had all he could take. John Stanton had had all he could take. When Billy Crowder, and he went into that room with that gun, folks, there were 2 fingers on the trigger of that rifle. There was Billy's and there was Thurman's, because Thurman brought this on himself.
Battered person's defense came from Hal Peel. He shared that with me, and he shared with me that it possibly could extend, that my client fit in the same situation. So we were able to use that defense at the trial.
And in this state, contrary to what you were told by the prosecution, there are incidences where justification and self-defense are allowed. And if you're weak and you're infirm, and you've been picked on and abused to such a manner that you can't defend yourself, then you've got to decide at the end of this case whether it was justified.
The prosecution had used the defendant's confessions to prove them guilty. Now, the defense sought to use those same confessions to set their clients free.
You know of plenty of incidences, according to the statement that you read of John Stanton's, where Thurman Martin had repeatedly done acts of violence against him.
All I know is John Stanton stated in his statement that he had done that. I did not know for a fact whether Martin did or not.
And you also noted in that statement, you read it yourself, that he moved from Ludowici to Brunswick to get away from Thurman Martin, did he not?
Again, all I know is that was Mr. Stanton's statement.
The defense next put on an entire lineup of the defendant's family and friends who had witnessed Martin's abuse.
The defense brought forward really a cross-section of the community. They brought relatives forward who said that they had seen Thurman Martin abuse his family members.
They would, just always be real scared, and they'd be crying and so afraid, and a lot of times would come to our house, and he would come hunting them.
I've seen him hit him with welding rods.
Approximately how hard would he strike Billy? Like that? Harder than that?
Yeah, so he just come around, when he'd strike him.
In general terms, what kind of person did you think Thurman Martin was?
Probably the cruelest man I ever met.
But the most chilling testimony came from Martin's granddaughter, Katie Crowder.
Katie probably had the most powerful testimony in the trial, I think. She certainly brought out more emotion than anyone could have.
I was afraid of him. I was afraid of what he tried to do.
And what were you afraid he would try to do?
That he would try to rape me.
Okay. Did he, in fact, try that?
He tried several times.
Okay. Did he ever?
No, sir, because I fought him off.
Okay.
That was the scene that brought Billy to tears. When Katie got on the stand and talked about her grandfather trying to molest her, that was the point that he broke down and cried.
Katie Crowder's testimony painted a horrific life behind the doors of Thurman Martin's home.
He told my grandmother he'd kill her. She had really bad breathing problems, and she had to use inhalers, and she was fussing and arguing with him back, and she went to get her inhaler, and he took it and threw it across the room and threatened to kill her if she went and got it, and threatened to kill me and my brother if we went and got it. And he went to the drawer and he pulled out a big butcher knife and put it up to her throat and threatening to kill her right in front of me and my brother. She told us to call the police, and he said that if we called the police that he'd kill her right there and then he'd kill us.
If they tried to report him, if they tried to leave, if they tried to escape from him, that they wouldn't get very far and that he would bring them back and they would pay even worse.
When we return, John Stanton and Billy Crowder get their day in court.
He had me like this, and
This is when I started saying, Jesus, help me. Jesus, help me. He said, that blankety blanky Jesus not gonna help you none. I'm gonna go ahead and kill you.
Next week.
We're getting you all ready for the major trials. Plus, Friday, our voice for the victims shines a light on the mystery behind the murders at an upscale shopping mall.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend. Will the truth finally be revealed?
The Killer or Cover-Up Murder Trial. Weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
Witnesses in the murder trial of Billy Crowder and John Stanton described horrific acts by Thurman Martin that the defense argued made the killing justified.
But while Billy Crowder had been abused by Martin his entire life, the same could not be said for John Stanton.
There was a little bit of abuse to my client, but it was not lifelong, and he voluntarily married into it. So I knew that was a problem.
Yet while he may not have suffered a lifetime of abuse at the hands of Thurman Martin, Stanton's wife, Diana, had.
It was shocking. Her psychological problems were severe. I had run across an incident where outside of Long County, where he had abused his daughter, my client's wife, down at a fishing village in Darien, Georgia. And so my client had built up incredible problems with this guy for what he had done to his wife.
Once again, Stanton's seemingly damning confession provided him with a lifeline.
I don't think the state wanted that statement read.
Read by the GBI agent who questioned him, the confession detailed the horrors Stanton's wife experienced at the hands of her father.
Even when he raped Diana Crowder, he used the Bible to tell her that it was all right for him to have sex with his daughter because when the flood destroyed the earth, the one that remained slept with their children.
The defense next called on psychologist Daniel Grant to testify about the impact on Stanton of being helpless to defend his wife.
If you stop and think about it, the emotional impact of not being able to defend your wife, and he knew that this had been going on for all her life.
At a certain point, anyone in such a situation is going to snap.
They feel trapped or cornered, and they don't see. They feel like they've tried other options, and they feel at the end of their options. And this is this is at that time the only solution they have to essentially end the abuse.
I knew that the one thing that could save me would be if the people in the community were truly aware of what Thurman was doing, they might come out with a not guilty.
But while Dr. Grant testified on behalf of his client, Stanton's attorney knew their expert witness had a much better chance of convincing the jury to acquit Billy Crowder.
I thought that if the battered person syndrome was going to work, it was probably only going to work for Billy.
Now, Dr. Grant, in connection with your work in this case, have you had the opportunity to interview Billy Crowder and other people?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
He's experiencing what I would classify post-traumatic stress disorder as far as feeling threatened or feeling like some serious imminent harm or even death would come to him. He was stabbed in the left shoulder by Mr. Martin one time with a screwdriver. He was repeatedly told that, that he was going to be killed. And so even when they did escape, there was really no escape because he would stalk them and find him. And also the reason he never left, because if one of them left, then he said, if any of y'all leave, then I'll kill the others.
While Dr. Grant provided critical testimony to support the defense's contention that Crowder and Stanton were justified in killing Thurman Martin, there was one more critical hurdle they had to overcome.
Georgia law says that if that's your only defense, then what you have to do is put up the defendant to show that the person suffers from battered person syndrome.
This meant that both defendants would have to testify, which was always a risky proposition.
When there's so much stuff happens to you, it's hard to sit down and remember little specific events unless they're so painful or so hurtful that you just is etched into your mind. That's why I brought out the tools with Gene and the tools with Billy. You ever been hit with anything like that?
That's just some moderate tools there. Yeah, I've been hit with that. I've been hit with 18-wheeler tire irons.
Will you please show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about how hard you would be hit and where you would be hit?
Like a wrench is right here. He'd sling it, and he'd sling it right there and spin, and just whatever force you put on, it'd hit enough, it'd leave a bruise.
And he would hit you?
He'd sling them at me. One time he took and directly stabbed me with a screwdriver. It's across my shoulder blade right here is a carburetor screwdriver.
But it wasn't the abuse directed at him that pained Crowder the most.
Everything he's done to me and my grandma, I've seen take my grandma, slap her in the back of the head, and knock her false teeth out. He'd hit her that hard. I've seen her knock her down the floor, take his foot and kick her right here in the ribs. She's had numerous broke ribs. As her lung disease and all advanced, but all the medicine got her skin got real brittle and anything. I mean, like you take and slap her real hard and the skin would just bust open and he just slap her back or something and just like it'd be like blood up under the skin where it'd come up.
Did you ever see him do that?
Yes, sir.
How many times?
I can't even count.
Billy, how did all this make you feel?
Well, let's see how it made me feel. How it also made me feel deep down, day in, day out, see my grandma abused, me abused, my sister abused. It made you feel like there's no hope because of the way he was or the way he proclaimed that he was around town, that nothing ever would be done to him.
After Billy had testified for nearly an hour, it was John Stanton's turn to take the stand, and he too told the jury about Martin's abuse.
He had me like this, and this is when I started saying, Jesus, help me. Jesus, help me. He said, that blankety Jesus not gonna help you none. I'm gonna go ahead and kill you.
But like Billy, it was the abuse of a loved one that hurt John the most.
He married Thurman Martin's daughter, who was much younger. He was really interested in taking care of her because he knew the trauma she'd been through, and she really couldn't survive on her own.
They diagnosed her as a multiple personality disorder. And the doctor, which is Dr. Bill Tollison, said that she had been sexually abused since the age of 2 years old.
I really think John Stanton thought he was helping. I think he thought, I've been around long enough, I know enough, nothing's going to stop this man, and he's ruining these people's lives, and I'm seeing the long-term effect with my wife, and I know these kids are going to be the same way, and I need to do something about it because nobody's going to listen to me.
But lost in the focus on the murder of Thurman Martin was another troubling charge facing the defendants: armed robbery.
Armed robbery is a capital offense in Georgia. You can get a life sentence for it.
Billy claimed that there was money of his that his grandfather had taken from him and that he had taken it back after he was shot. It almost thought of an add-on charge that nobody had really thought about.
When we come back, the jury returns with a verdict, and Billy Crowder talks about life after the Tomato Patch murder.
Hey, for all y'all viewers, please, I highly recommend do not take the law in your own hands. It's a lose-lose situation. Trust me from experience.
This is Court TV.
What a day it has been as we continue our gavel-to-gavel coverage.
Is there reasonable doubt? We'll find out.
Welcome back to Court TV Live.
Your front row seat to justice.
John Stanton and Billy Crowder were facing life in prison for murdering the abusive Thurman Martin. Now, the jury was ready to determine their fate.
When the jury began deliberating against Billy Crowder and John Stanton, it took some time. And the longer it took, the more Both sides and everyone out in the hallway and everyone on the front yard of the courthouse is wondering what's going to happen with this.
Between your closing argument and the return of the verdict is the worst time in any trial.
The jury first read the verdict for John Stanton.
Where the jury found the defendant, John Stanton, guilty of the offense of murder, a felony.
I think seeing the trial as it went, I think he expected it.
All right, Mr. Stanton, please rise. Mr. Stanton, this is a complicated and a hard case. The jury has made a decision on the murder issue. There's no discretion that I have in that sentence. It's life, and I sentence you to life for the murder of Thurman Martin.
I don't remember him saying much at all. I think he was just in shock.
Jim Sherling was on the jury that sentenced John Stanton to life in prison.
Some of us kind of felt that John Stanton was a grown man and didn't have to be there. I think there were comments that were made that at least in prison he would get the right medication that he needed and get the care that he needed.
Next, the jury revealed Billy Crowder's fate.
Where the jury found the defendant, Billy Crowder, guilty of the lesser crime of voluntary manslaughter.
When they returned the verdict and they found him guilty of manslaughter, I breathed a sigh of relief.
I felt all along that it was voluntary manslaughter and not murder because of the circumstances behind why they did it. And I was glad that they gave us the option and was hoping it would end up being a lighter sentence. Billy was there and stayed there because of his sister. He felt he needed to be there for her.
Unfortunately for Crowder, the jury had one more serious charge to consider.
Count 2, where the jury found the defendant, Billy Crowder, guilty of the offense of armed robbery.
When they found him guilty of armed robbery, I felt terrible. I mean, it was just awful. I can't even, it was awful.
We felt it shouldn't have been an armed robbery charge, but they gave us no other option to charge him with, and he did take the money.
On voluntary manslaughter, I sentence you to 5 years, consecutive to any other sentence. On the armed robbery, I sentence you to life.
The armed robbery thing's a scary thing in Georgia. Every armed robbery trial I've ever seen come back with a guilty verdict is a life sentence.
If I had known that he could have gotten life for armed robbery, my decision may have went a different route. And I don't think I'm the only one that felt that way.
It's been over 20 years since the so-called Tomato Patch murder trial. John Stanton would never see the outside world again. He died after serving 7 years in prison. After serving over a decade in prison, not for the murder of his grandfather, but for stealing a few $100s from his wallet, Billy Crowder is out and still adjusting to his freedom.
This world out here is totally different than it was growing up. Just imagine stepping 15 years into the future. Nothing's the same. I mean, literally nothing. I'm still dealing with it every day.
After difficult years of readjustment, he's found a job he loves with people who know his past but accept him anyway.
We're a transmission shop and general repair, but mainly transmission shop. But Billy did come up and say to me, before you hire me, I want you to know who I am and where I've come from. So I was like, oh, Lord, what are we getting into here? But he showed me a story, told me the story, and after seeing it, I knew Billy was going to work out with us wonderfully. He's a good guy. He's there day and night. He lives right across the street from us, so he's real easy to say, hey, my mother's got a flat tire, can you come help me? And he'll jump or he'll run right on over. You know, he's great.
They're like a family I never had or a family I wish I had. They've helped me so much.
My daughter, Christina Cricket, will talk with him, and I'll talk with him, and he tends to say that without us, he needs us.
We've got a common ground on certain things because I've gone through certain abuse and things with people.
Cricket, oh my God, she's been my little counselor. She's helped me through some very dark times.
He has his good days and bad days, like everybody does. Everybody has good days and bad days.
My frame of mind nowadays, I just want to be left alone. What years I got left, be happy.